Hi, Susie. How you doing?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Really good. Not too bad at all.
And I want to start by wishing you a happy 50th birthday.
Thank you.
I
Thanks
know
for
it was
reminding
just at
me.
the weekend. So,
Yes, it was. Yes. So I'm still adjusting. So I'm not 100% comfortable yet. It's still a little bit. It takes a while to adjust to. But I'm feeling pretty. I am feeling pretty good for 50. So yeah, fit and functional and relatively healthy, and
thank
hopefully
God. Thank God.
can
Thank
maintain
God.
that as long as possible.
Absolutely. And personally speaking, Darryl, you're a huge inspiration to me. I'm not too far behind you in age. And I look at you, I see your posts on Instagram where you're doing incredible things in the park. And I just aspire to be a bit more like you. So thank you so much for coming on the Wellness Unwrapped podcast. It's been a while since I actually saw you in person. It was about 18 months ago we gave a talk together in Manchester, although you did spot me at the theatre just before lockdown, didn't you?
I did, yes, yes, and I was like, I'm sure that's Susie, I'm sure, and then yeah, when I realized it actually was you, yeah, I you
Yeah.
disappeared.
No, it seems so weird now to think that we were both in the West End in a theatre. Who'd have thought? It
mm,
was just a bit before lockdown, and
yeah, it was
yeah,
just before lockdown. So
it's a whole new world
yeah,
now.
it's a whole new world. It's a
Yes, it is.
dystopian. It's a kind of almost like a dystopian nightmare. Or, well, not so
Yeah.
much now, but when lockdown was first initiated, and the streets of London were deserted, I certainly felt as if it was 28 days later. I don't know if you've seen the film, but yeah, there's a famous scene in that movie where somebody wakes up out of a hospital bed after being in a coma, and when they come out of the coma, there's no one in the hospital. They go outside and they're walking across Westminster Bridge, and it's yeah, London is completely deserted. So so
Yeah.
yeah, London was like that for a week or so post lockdown, and it was very eerie, very silent, not
Yeah.
typical not typical London at all, when it's usually busy and racing and lots of people milling around.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. It's very, very strange times. And it's
Mm.
something we're going to touch on in this conversation. But I just like to start by asking you, and you've told me this story before because I actually interviewed you a few years ago, again on Zoom. But if I'd have just seen your posts on Instagram, I think I would have assumed that you had always been like, um, I don't know, like a personal trainer or something like
Mm.
that. But actually, your
Mm.
career path has followed a very unusual trajectory, hasn't it? Because you used to work in a very much a desk job.
Yes.
Yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit about the course of your journey?
Yeah, so I was a desk jockey, as they can often be termed. I worked in investment banking as a technologist, and I was a geek. So I wasn't the jock, I wasn't the athlete. I was the nerd, I was the geek. I loved playing with computers, and that's what I did at university. I did computer science. I managed to work for Microsoft in the early 90s, had a very successful career. But back in those days, tech weren't paying very well. Um, Surprisingly, it's not the case anymore. But they weren't paying very well. But investment banking certainly was paying well. So I was headhunted, went into banking, and banking was just throwing money at technology. They really wanted to exploit technology to make more money. So I was right in the thick of it and had a very successful career. But there were so many demands on you, not just whilst at work, but outside of work. So I was probably one of the first wave of people who would be working from home, where you'd be working 16 hour days, 18-hour days in the office, but you would continue that work out of hours to make sure systems were working, to making sure that the bank was making money. So I had a 24/7 pretty much, responsibility. I was on call. I was called. Problems would be escalated to me, and that would be anywhere within the world. So London based, but we had operations in Hong Kong, in Sydney, in New York, and I had global responsibility for many of those systems.
And you got quite unhealthy, didn't you?
Yeah, so I wasn't sleeping very much, wasn't particularly eating well, and I was at my desk, surrounded by computer screens. And one of the fortunate aspects of my job was I had annual health checks, very, very thorough, lots of health markers, lots of blood draws, very comprehensive. And one year they said to me, "Mr. Edwards, you have pre-diabetes." I was one step away from full-blown type 2. I had chronic hypertension, which is basically high blood pressure, which is always at a too high level, elevated level. I had a really poor lipid profile, so my cholesterol and triglycerides were harmful to my health. And the recommendation by my doctor was to have statins for my cholesterol, beta blockers to manage my blood pressure, and metformin to manage my blood sugars. And I was petrified of taking medication forever, which is what I was told I would have to do. You've got to take these until the end of your days. If you don't, you're probably going to die within the next few years of a heart attack or a stroke or something along those lines. And I was like, well, what can I do to get out of this mess apart from taking drugs? And I knew that exercise could certainly help with reducing blood pressure. So that's what I started to do. I recognized that I was very sedentary. Let me start an exercise program, and let's see if there are going to be any benefits. And within a short space of time, within a month or so, blood pressure came down. My blood sugars were normalizing. I was no longer having issues with my cholesterol. Everything just seemed to improve. And I remember saying to my doctor after my next blood test, which is probably about 30 days afterwards, and I had again second month of blood draws, third month of blood draws. I just remember saying to my doctor, I want to keep monitoring these, and if this isn't working, if this no longer works, I'll be happy to take the drugs. And thankfully, 15, 16 years on, I'm still able to manage my health status through lifestyle. So movement was the gateway for me. I then decided, after sort of 7 years of cross-training, becoming a nutritional therapist, becoming a personal trainer, getting mentored in different fields, that I wanted to work within this field of health promotion and preventative, preventing chronic lifestyle disease, using lifestyle and using movement, which I believe to be premier as a medicine, as a preventative therapeutic tool that we can utilize, that is harnessable. We can all harness. So that was the starting point, the turning point, the gateway. And coming into this industry, leaving my previous industry, I realized that even with the knowledge that we possess about the benefits of exercise, we have great difficulties in actually doing it. And I think the alternative health message, the non-conventional health message, I think embraces nutrition quite well. A layperson is bombarded constantly with this message of clean eating, all disease begins in the gut, like let food be your medicine, let medicine be your food. Many people who have even a glib interest in improving their health and well-being know that nutrition is important. And most of the people that we see in the field will be highlighting food is good, food is great. That's what we can do to change our health outcomes. Exercise, the focal point tends to be, we know it's good for you, but it's mainly about getting into shape. It's usually focused on aesthetics. And there aren't any specifics in relation to how it can help. So my job was to understand the specifics and the science, and to recognize how powerful movement is, and to recognize the aspects of movement that can't be addressed by any other lifestyle mechanism.
Right.
So, you know,
let's talk about the benefits.
Yeah.
If I could just cut across you there, Darryl, because the benefits are so enormous, aren't they? And they're so multifaceted. In not just in terms of our physical health, but very much in terms of our mental health as well. So can you just run through, for people who maybe are a bit sedentary at the moment, and a lot of the nation is pretty sedentary. So how can we kind of sell the concept of movement?
Yeah, well, there's two ways of looking at this. There's the long-term benefits. So if you're thinking about healthy aging, if you're thinking about longevity, if you're thinking about disease prevention, chronic lifestyle disease prevention, heart disease, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, strokes, cancer, if you're thinking about those issues, dementia, Alzheimer's and the like, if you're thinking about those big ticket diseases that many of us are aware the risk increases as we get older, exercise is one of the best tools that we have, the best interventions we have to reduce the risk of chronic lifestyle disease. And this is very well established in terms of the evidence. There isn't much dispute on that. Unlike, say, in the nutritional sphere, there's a lot of ambiguity. You know, avocados are good, no, they're not. Eggs are good, no, they're not. You know, there's a lot of, we know food is important, but what path am I going to take to improve my health? That is very much under discussion all of the time. Lots of different opinions. With movement, with physical activity, we know doing more pretty much is beneficial. That's, you know, if you're sedentary and you just do more movement, that's a significant improvement in your health outcomes. A 50% reduction in all-cause mortality if you meet the minimum physical activity guidelines of 150 minutes a week and 2 days a week of resistance or strength training. If you meet that minimum, you've halved your risk of dying from premature death of any cause. So that level of evidence doesn't exist anywhere with any other intervention. That's probably the most important thing, actually. No one can marry up, tie up and say, actually, sleep will do this, have exactly the same benefit as physical activity or nutrition or stress management, or none of those factors in an isolated comparison, one-on-one comparison, don't do as well when it comes to physical activity. Okay. And even if we remove the bias, and let's just say Darryl Edwards is biased because he loves movement, what I would say to support that is movement is one of the things that underpins all of those other lifestyle choices that we make. So it improves your digestion of good food. It helps with motility of food throughout the gut. It allows your body to be able to repair from taking nutrients from food. Your body actually has more of a need to do that. So you get more out of your food. Secondly, it improves sleep quality. So if you're trying to improve sleep hygiene, if you're active, it gives you better quality sleep. You get more deep sleep, more REM sleep. It helps to improve your immune system. So even, it reduces stress. It improves cognitive function. So there are so many side benefits, I would say. The direct benefits that come from just being active, improving your function, improving your quality of life. And then there are the benefits, which mean the other things that we need to do, because they obviously are important, will also benefit. And this sort of symbiotic relationship, movement again, is probably the best mechanism of doing that, because it supports, it's fundamental to all of those other areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what I find very refreshing about your approach is obviously you're very grounded in the science, but you also bring very much an element of fun and lightheartedness to this, because for a lot of people who scroll down Instagram and see people very much in their lycra and, they're saying, well, I crunched out X number of burpees this morning and today I'm doing abs. And I think that's fabulous if that resonates with you and if that's where you are. But for a lot of people, I have to say myself included, that doesn't resonate with me. And it can feel quite alienating for those of us who don't want to hit the gym, and do these kind of very intense HIIT workouts and stuff, because we find it maybe a bit joyless and off-putting. Whereas what I really love is that you've kind of taken this a bit out of the gym and into outside. So can you speak a little bit about your ethos in terms of movement?
Yeah, so I suppose the second point in relation to what our previous discussion was, we spoke about the long-term benefits, but there are the immediate benefits that we get from physical activity, which are, the release of the feel-good hormones, endorphins, dopamine, serotonin. It makes us feel better when we're physically active. And so joy, pleasure should be part and parcel of your movement experience. If it's something that you're doing optionally. So if you're choosing to do something with movement, then we usually want it to be something which is pleasurable, not just goal-based, not just objective-based. And that's one of the problems with exercise. So exercise is a modern construct designed to fill in the kind of gaps based on the lack of physical activity we would be getting based on what we did to survive. So we don't have to hunt and gather foods, we don't have to build our shelters, we don't have to even do our own housework. We can get robots to do it, or we can pay people to do it for. We can almost outsource movement out of our lives. So I would argue this is one of the reasons why the gym is alienating for a lot of people. Not just because of not fitting in, feeling like, I don't look the same as other people, or I don't feel comfortable in that environment because I don't understand what's going on, I don't understand the exercise, it's all so difficult. But actually the feeling one gets from punitive, punishing measures that tends to be celebrated in the fitness world, no pain, no gain, all this sort of like, sweat is your body crying for mercy. You have to show us how hard you're working, how hard you're punishing yourself. Then you can get 10-pack abs. Then you can get these amazing results. Then you can drop a dress size, etc., etc., etc. And so I feel it's harmful because it does alienate. It is elitist. It does only appeal to a minority of people who love that message. A certain type of personality who are like, yes, self-disciplined, willpower, I can get this done. The people who can't just tend to be, they're just lazy. That's why they're not getting the results that they need. So that is the overarching message. And I can honestly confess that when I started my journey, that was a sort of gym that I wanted to own. I wanted to own a gym. I wanted to have very exclusive members, probably people who worked in banking, who could afford to pay that exclusive membership, who literally wanted to train like athletes for however long period of time. And that's what I wanted. That's what I deemed to be success. Imagine if I could have an exclusive gym with just 10 members, 15 members who pay a shed load of money to be trained in the best possible way. Like a secret kind of black box membership. Don't even mention you're a member of this gym. Do you know what I mean? You can't rock up and sign a membership form to get in. It's very exclusive. That was my starting point, until I realized that the majority of people wouldn't be able to access that resource. I would still be providing pain, and punishment, not pleasure. And one of the first times I remember having an injury because I was pushing myself so hard. I remember getting an injury and I couldn't move very well. I couldn't go to the gym. I couldn't exercise for a few months. And then it started feeling great, not being able to go. It felt wonderful just being able to play my Xbox all day, and I've got an excuse not to exercise. And when I came out of my injury, I realized me wanting to get fitter again wasn't good enough. It wasn't a good enough excuse to go back. It felt nicer being sedentary. And so I realized that's why many people don't fall in love with the gym or exercise long term, because actually being sedentary is a bigger draw. It feels the comfort of not going to the gym, of sitting in a nice comfortable chair, of that feels more enticing than go, beat yourself up for 30 minutes for an hour.
Yeah. So what changed? What did you then do differently?
The eureka moment was thinking about, what can I do to enjoy this again? How could I, even though I had all of those benefits, why is that not enough? Why are the benefits of physical activity not enough to engage me to continue? And it was because there was a lack of joy. There was a lack of enjoyment, when it came to the process. I could only enjoy the end results. Look at me now. Look, that's what this has been about. This is what's enjoyable. Look at me beating my peers. Great. Look at me getting a certain time if I do a 5K run. Wow. How amazing am I? Look how much money I've raised for charity. Yes. Aren't I a great individual? All of those were the main drivers. But I wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't enjoying the process. And of course, the process, you spend far more time in the process than you do celebrating the results. The results, like a few seconds of, oh, look, yes. But then the moment's gone. You're thinking, what's next? How much further can I run next time? What else can I do? How much more money can I raise next time to be excited by this? So I thought, when was the last time I enjoyed movement? It was when I was a kid playing, when it wasn't about exercise, when it was about free play, outside usually. PE at school wasn't that enjoyable, unless it was the end of the year when it was like, yeah, do whatever you want, kids, let's play some games. But most of the year, it was like a military boot camp at my school.
Yeah.
That's what PE was like back in my day. So there was no fun there. So, okay, one tick was play when I was young. That was enjoyable. Going to when I went to nightclubs and dancing all night, that was fun. And that could have been hours and hours and hours of aerobic exercise where I wasn't grimacing all night and I was smiling and having fun and like, oh my goodness, my favorite song has come on. And even though I'm really shattered and I don't feel I've got any energy left, I can still go,
Yeah.
So those memories, I recognized I could regain them. And I didn't have to be in a club and I didn't have to be a child. I could reclaim that childlike purity and essence of the joy of movement. That's what I wanted again. And so Primal Play was born, this way of looking at evolutionary biology, looking at our need for movement, how much, why we need to move, how much we need to be doing, what movement patterns we should be engaging in, what should be balancing all of that sort of equation out, adequate rest, adequate recovery, all of those things, the science of how many sets and reps, if that's what you want to use. All those things are very important. But using play psychology so that experience can be sustainable, enjoyable, fun, serious, because that's also important. I don't just want to be rolling down the hill saying, hey, isn't this fun? Look at me playing with balloons. Wow, I'm playing. Yes, I might be playing and having fun, but I'm not going to be getting the health benefits that come about by stressing my body physically, by improving my function, improving my capability, by maintaining youthfulness and vitality. So the fun piece is important, but it's not the be all and end all as well. So yeah, so that's what basically happened. This evolutionary biology, this primal, instinctive, universal driver for movement, with play psychology to make it fun, and then using modern exercise science to say, thank you for backing this up and consolidating the evidence to make sure that all of this works and is really important.
Okay, so just to give listeners a bit more of an insight into what that practically means, because I've seen you in action with a crowd of people when we both gave a talk together about 18 months ago in Manchester with Tribe Manchester, and it was all about movement as medicine. And one of your party tricks, Darryl, is this not correct, is carrying people over your shoulder. And I was one of those people.
Yes.
So I can vouch that you are very, very strong, very, very strong, because you can sort of walk around with somebody over your shoulder without no sweat whatsoever. But one of the really, really fun things that you showed everybody was you got people to split into pairs, and then you got them playing a version, and this was in a confined area, a version of tig or tag, where they just had to touch each other's legs. And it was incredible to watch the atmosphere in the room just suddenly explode into joyful laughter, because people couldn't help themselves. You couldn't possibly play this game and not laugh. And it happened instantly across the room. You know, there wasn't a single person there who didn't have a huge smile, you know, including me, as we were playing this game. And it was quite aerobic, when you're ducking and you're diving, and it was great fun. And then you also got us standing on one leg and with our partner and trying to do like an arm wrestle on one leg. So you had the balance.
Great memory.
Stuff. Yeah, well, I loved it, and everybody loved it. And actually, I took those practices away and kind of showed them to my kids. I was out with a friend of mine for a walk a few months later, and I said to my friend, can I just show you this game that Darryl Edwards taught me? And we were in a park with houses overlooking, and we started playing this game of tig or tag. And I don't know what the neighbors thought as they were looking out at these two women in their late 40s, but it was great fun. So I want to thank you for sharing those.
Oh, no, you're welcome. And I mean, I do have lots of those games. Even though for those listening, if you're struggling to kind of visualize exactly what Susie's talking about, I do have examples and demonstrations on my website. That game, the sort of tag game, I call Primal Play Tag. So you can search it up on my website. But it is a lot of fun, because it's not only the activity itself. It's which, again, I like to define play not as the activity, but the attitude that you have, the mindset. So you could be doing exactly the same thing and not doing it in a playful way. It could just be like hard work, not that much fun. But with something like tag, a chasing game, it's universal. So not only are you experiencing it in the moment, your body and your mind is also telling you, do you remember how much fun this was when you played chasing games when you were young? When you played tig or tag or it or whatever it was called, do you know, your body, the nostalgia, that comes flooding back. And that's part of the magic of Primal Play and the Primal Play Method, is I'm trying to encourage very easily, almost subliminally, this experience. So the barriers to entry are lowered. People, even if they feel like, oh, that's not me at all. I only want to be serious when I exercise. You know, even if you have that when you're initiating this experience, that all falls away, and all you're thinking about is, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. I had no idea I could bend my knee like that. You know, you're not thinking about physical limitations, about the pain, the injuries. You're thinking about what you can actually do, which is enjoyable and engaging. And there's some, you know, you're tactile with another human being, and you're releasing oxytocin, and you're releasing, you know, the risk reward hormone of dopamine. That's being released every time you tag someone, every time you avoid being tagged. And this dopamine hit is a natural response. So it's a healthful response. It's not like the one you get from swiping your phone and getting likes, you know, where there's not really much effort to get those. You know, when you're physically active and you're playing a game where there are rewards for success and there's risks for failure, you're more engaged. And you're taught that you have to do a certain amount of work in a certain particular way in order to achieve an objective. So play is an important part, especially for children, to explore these evolutionary responses, these hormones. So again, even in the context of hormones, a lot of times I see hormones being discussed, these hormones, it tends to be about, again, nutrition, about food. And actually, what we don't realize is, before food, there was movement. Because if you couldn't move, you wouldn't be able to access food. If a baby couldn't suckle, A baby couldn't get mother's milk. I mean, this is, movement is so essential, so fundamental to life in all forms. Reproduction. I mean, it is movement is life itself.
Yes.
And so play is one of the mechanisms for children to explore their capabilities of movement, and they mimic adults. So for a hunter-gatherer community, children will mimic the behaviors of the adults. They will pretend to cook and prepare food. They will pretend to hunt. They will pretend to build shelter. They'll climb trees. They'll do all of the actions that they see the adults doing. They don't see adults sitting down all of the time, being sedentary. That's not what they see, right?
Yeah.
So if you remove those behaviors and you model sedentary behaviors, and your children see a lot of screen device time and watching TV, that becomes the norm for them. And so the instinctive desire for them to want to be rushing around and active and, oh my gosh, I've got to burn all this energy. It doesn't take long for children to go, okay, I actually feel happier just sitting here or lying here playing with my device. What else is there for me to do? What else would be more exciting than this? So yeah, that's the sort of, the downsides I feel to the sedentary lifestyle for humans is what is happening to our children.
It's such a huge point that you've highlighted there, Darryl, and we're seeing the effects of this.
Yes.
I was just chatting to a very young girl yesterday, and you hear the sort of the daily routine, which was quite normal for her age group, of being on TikTok until midnight. So just for hours, apart from the impact it's having on her sleep and all the rest of it. But it's just heartbreaking when you see that kids are so attached to the screen at the expense of other activities, which, as you say, would be normal, which used to be normal for a child to do. So we are paying a very, very heavy price, aren't we?
We are. Emotional health, mental health, physical health, all, and as you say, it's I don't want to sound as if movement is the only thing that's important. There are many pillars of health. We know this. But I suppose as a spokesperson, I feel like I have to be a spokesperson for movement because it is like the Cinderella. I think it's a Cinderella of lifestyle pillars. And other areas get lots of prominence. They're probably more sexier to talk about, to want to implement. And I think in some respects, you can get more help with those areas, because with movement, you can only do it yourself. You can't, if I have the resources, I can pay someone to tell me what to eat. I can get somebody to cook the food for me. I could even pay somebody to feed me. I could go to that length, right? With physical activity, I've got to do it myself. I mean, it's as simple as that. So for children, if when I was young, if I was bored, Mom, I'm bored. Go and do something. Amuse yourself. Find something to do. So that's what you did. You had to go outside, usually without supervision, with your friends, to amuse yourself, to play, to use your imagination, to have adventures. And then that experience became, oh my goodness, all day long summer days. I don't even remember it raining when I was a kid. Only when I was going to school. If I was going to school, it rained. But in terms of the playtime, I just remember long, hot summer days, not wanting to go back inside because of food. I just wanted to play, keep on playing. Mother having to call me to get in. See you guys later. Rushing food down as quickly as possible to get back outside again. So that, children's TV was probably one show in the morning. That was it. You'd watch that and then you're outside. It was a different world for sure. And of course, it may sound like I'm over romanticizing it, because it wasn't all good. But in relation to a child's desire to move, to have fun with movement, to have fun with your friends, to explore the world around you, to embark on risky pursuits. A lot of the games we would play were risky. I mean, that's the truth. And most of it wasn't because you were told to do it. It was because you were like, I wonder what it's like down there. I wonder what it's like to be able to climb that tree and to get down safely, or playing games like Knocked or Run.
Oh, my husband used to love that. My husband he was always hedge hopping and playing Knocked or Run and lighting, setting off like fireworks in people's gardens and stuff. But he's calmed down a lot since then. But you know what I'm thinking about, Darryl, as you said that, is we do live in a very risk-averse society now. But now that we are, we're at the latter end of lockdown now. And of course, that's multiplied now, 100-fold, because there are a lot of kids who are anxious of even going out of the door now. And if they have been kind of kept indoors, for whatever reason, if they weren't able, a lot of kids have not had access to their usual parks, etc., during these months. And I know, thinking about a lot of people who are now working at home as well, who maybe used to have a commute. I'm thinking of my son Louis, he's been based at home during lockdown, and he didn't have a massive commute in London, but at least he had a short commute to walk to the tube station. And now he'll get up and he'll work on his bed, answering his emails, and maybe get out of bed to walk afoot to have his Zoom meetings. But there's not a lot of movement there. And you can get away with that in lockdown. And it's kind of like, oh gosh, wow, that's even worse than people working in an office.
Oh, yeah, it's certainly accelerated, I suppose. I mean, I gave a TED talk last year, and I spoke
it's brilliant. Everyone listen to Darryl's TED talk. It's fantastic.
It's called Why Working Out Isn't Working Out. I spoke about, I spoke about the reality of this sedentary lifestyle and how comfortable it is being comfortable. And I think for me, the COVID-19 pandemic has just accelerated this devolution to an even more sedentary lifestyle.
Yeah.
Because now, as you say, there are some people who don't have to commute.
Yes.
So I could literally lie in bed all day if I wanted to, and probably a toilet break, and maybe I've got to eat, so maybe I have to get out of bed to eat, and I have to have a toilet break. But some people's existence will be like that now, and I think probably more important than just thinking about how damaging that is in so many ways, is to say that some of the lifestyle journey, some of this well-being journey involves inconvenience, involves feeling challenged, involves feeling uncomfortable. That's what I feel makes us more resilient and more robust, and actually improves our health when we can deal with these decisions in a way which isn't always, I'm going to feel, I feel really good doing this, because sometimes we do feel really good lying in bed answering emails. I mean, how great is that? I don't have to go into work. I can work here and just, almost half asleep, and I can still get paid. Isn't this amazing? Isn't this wonderful? And then you just morph into a body that feels uncomfortable. Then when you do start walking, you're like, oh my gosh, I've got all these aches and pains. I've got back pain. I'm kind of wasting away. So the body is fantastically efficient at removing what it feels is no longer relevant. So we will lose muscle mass if we don't use it. We'll lose bone density if we don't use it. We'll lose brain mass if we don't move.
Yeah.
Right? It's not, even if you're thinking, oh, well, I'm still doing a demanding job, I'm still doing crossword puzzles in bed, I'm going to be protecting my muscle mass. Actually, no. Movement and the kind of motor cortex is huge. There's a huge parts of the brain that are responsible for movement. You don't move as frequently, you don't move as vigorously, you're reducing the size of the brain. So you're increasing the risk of dementia. You're decreasing the risk of cognitive decline, even when you're young. And that can start from children, believe it or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the least active children are most likely to suffer from dementia.
Yeah, and you know what?
Yeah.
It reminds me of, Darryl, as you were talking there, I just had a flash in my mind, and the picture that came up, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Wall-E. And it's basically, set where in the future where people are confined to these, I don't know how, it's like a little buggy because they can no longer walk, and they just have their sodas, and they're just with the big screens. I just dystopian vision when you were talking about that, of people no longer being able to use their limbs because we've not used them.
Yes, exactly. And you know, that was, I think that movie is set in the 27th century, I think.
Right.
And ironically or unfortunately, a lot of those behaviors are very much 21st century. Yeah. So of course we're not on little mini hovercrafts being completely supporting our body weight, but most of our transport is based on us sitting in vehicles that do the locomotion for us. Again, housework. I mean, I think in terms of practical takeaways, if you have an opportunity to take the more difficult path when it comes to movement, that's what we should be seeking to do. That's our way of addressing this problem of an ever decline in physical activity. So in other words, I rarely use a vacuum cleaner now. I do have one. Sometimes I have to use it. It's one of the best ways to get rid of dust and all those things. But most of the time I use a dustpan and brush. I use a full length broom, and I use a small broom, a small brush, and I'm like getting under the chairs and sofas, and I'm like, it's amazing how much your body moves doing these what would have been a traditional way of cleaning the home. So when I was young, I remember my mother still doing, she washed, there was a time when I remember her washing clothes by hand still, before we had a washing machine. Her cleaning the floor on her hands and knees, cleaning the floor. I remember washing clothes over the bath. Yes. Very vigorous activities. And I couldn't do the same. I wasn't as strong as she was, and like really scrubbing, and it took a lot of effort. So I sometimes substitute these easy, convenient, oh, isn't it great, the vacuum cleaner just floats on air, it's just so easy, relaxing, to like brushing and going, wow, I'm getting a bit of sweat here, and I'm leaning and I'm reaching and I'm lunging. And those activities I feel we can do without it taking much more time, and you can integrate into your day, and you don't have to feel like you're exercising, you can just feel like you're moving more. So and then you'll start relishing that. You'll get to the point where you'll start relishing taking advantage of these opportunities. So for example, if I see stairs now, I will want to run up a flight of stairs. If there's 2 or 3 flights of stairs, I'm like, I don't want to just walk up them idly. I'm like, yes, I can get 10 seconds of a quick bound up the stairs. If I see people outside, sometimes I'll be walking, I notice I'm really, really walking slowly. So I say to myself, you know what, I'm going to play a game and overtake as many people as I can. And then I'm kind of like bobbing and weaving past people, and it looks like I'm on a mission, but actually I'm just thinking, no, here's another advantage, and I'm giving myself points every time I pass someone. And I get annoyed when somebody's walking faster than me, and I'm thinking, hold on a second, I'm supposed to be walking fast. Why is that person walking faster than I? So again, this is part of this playful, making it a bit more playful, rather than just thinking I have to do it because it's good for me. And that attitude, I feel, works in all the other areas of health and well-being, actually. It's easier. I have a KFC not very far from me. Of course it's easier for me to go every meal, say, I'll just grab a KFC. That's the easy way out. It's more difficult for me to say, I'm going to go to the store, I'm going to carry the bags with the food that I've sourced, I'm going to bring it back, I'm going to then prepare it and cook it, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of that work is more challenging. And it is.
It is. I mean, when I think about, I have an allotment, and which is in itself a lot of work, all the weeds and everything, it's very physical, but the guys on either side, they're always, when they see me with the watering cans, they're always like, Susie, just borrow my hose pipe. I'm like, no, I'm fine. And I'm like, and I'll just go backwards and forwards, carrying 2 huge watering cans, because I would just rather get that extra bit of carrying heavy stuff.
Great. No, I mean, it's
understand it. They're like feeling really sorry for me, that like, because I'm schlepping backwards and forwards. But yes, of course I could get the hose pipe and just dump it on the allotment and come back half an hour later, or just move it a bit. But it's quite nice to lift something heavy, I think so. Sometimes.
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, and again, you know what I'm going to say now, which might sound sexist, but they're not even saying to you, let us carry the water for you, right? They're saying, let us give you the hose pipe. So they're not, you know, like, even, you know, it's like, you know, whenever I see somebody on the tube in London with heavy suitcases, I cannot wait to offer to help them.
Oh.
I'm like, I want to help. And they think it's purely because I'm being chivalrous, but I'll do it to men and women. I'll do it to older adults and younger adults. I don't discriminate, but because I'm thinking this feels good. One, to be able to help, but secondly, I'm getting a bit more exertion for me. This is not a problem. And even if I am 2/3 up a long flight of stairs thinking, why did I say yes to this? Why did I agree to help? You know, it's like, no, this is doing me some good. I think we can take opportunities for more movement snacks. Do them frequently and often. You don't have to have huge movement meals, you know, get huge batches in. Just break up sedentary time. Break it up.
Yeah, I think I love that movement snacks concept, because I think if people understand that these incidental bits of movement do count, that there doesn't have to be an hour's pounding the streets, you know, it can be these incidental, and then it becomes more accessible to people and more realistic, and they can actually begin to incorporate into their daily lives. So can you just touch on what resources you've put together, Darryl, that people who have listened to you today and think, right, I feel inspired to kind of go and do something, like, where can they start?
Yeah, so firstly, if you felt inspired, if you feel that you agree with me, or you feel that you don't agree with me, my resources are still useful. So I have books. So my latest book is called Animal Moves, and it explores why we should move more like the humans that we are, like the animals that we are. And it explores the different types of movement patterns we should engage in by using the animal kingdom or the rest of the animal kingdom as reference. So we should be engaging in not just walking and running and lifting heavy in the gym, but there are all these other bounty of movement patterns that make us feel great because we're doing movement patterns that we've always done as Homo sapiens. That's basically why they feel good. So that's my book. It's a bit more structured. It has some science. It has a 28-day program, and it takes you through different intensities, strength days, posture days, kind of, you know, more mindful days, and lots of fun days are in there. Play days are in there. I have products called the Animal Moves Fitness Decks, and they add even more gamification, sort of analog gaming rather than digital, using playing cards or fitness cards, like a deck of cards, but with movements. So you can play games, you can, you know, almost like tag team different movement patterns for kids, for adults. And I have other decks in the range, like an office deck. So if you are sitting at work, or you are sitting at home, or even if you have a standing desk at home, you can use these cards to get a bit more movement. Every couple of minutes or every half an hour, you can go, let me see what the next card is. You do a quick movement, and then you carry on working, just to kind of break things up. And then finally, I have lots of resources on my website. I have a significant evidence base, lots of research, lots of citations. I think it's really important for me not just to talk in a philosophical way, which can often sound like fiction. You know, it's like, well, okay, it sounds great, sounds wonderful, but where's the evidence? Like, why should I be doing this? Okay, right, well, here's some evidence to back that up. And this is why it's useful, not just for me, but for humans, because movement is important and movement is medicine and so on. And then I also have e-courses, and for those who want a little bit more assistance. And then finally, even though I've said finally a few times, I finally have sort of one-to-one sessions and workshops for those who actually want to work with me in person and sort of optimize their movement experience and their movement journey. Those are all the options that are available.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Darryl. And there's one other thing that I would like to direct listeners to, which is on a completely different subject, but I listened to your conversation with Dr. Rangan Chatterjee for his Feel Better, Live More podcast on Black racism. And I it's difficult to put into words how I felt, and I'm sure how other people felt listening to your experience. And it's something I would have loved to carry on talking to you about, but I personally want to thank you for speaking so eloquently about a history which I was not familiar with. It's not something that I had learnt about in school. I felt, really quite ignorant once I had my eyes opened to the facts of what has happened, and also to the reality of what you and so many other people go through in terms of when you talked about how many times you've been pulled over by the police, just for being behind a wheel. I couldn't even begin to, having never ever had that experience, and having two sons, a 22-year-old and a 19-year-old who have never had that experience. I found it deeply disturbing, very, very, very upsetting. But I was so glad that I had heard you, and that I could then, stand shoulder to shoulder with you as much as I can, not being Black, but just to kind of help educate more people. So
firstly, thank you. Thank you for listening, and thank you for expressing how you felt about that. And it is challenging. It is uncomfortable, and I suppose I can only liken it to, it's like the conversation we just had about sometimes you have to find and seek out discomfort in order to come through the other side a better person, understanding other people's plights, whatever that may be. And I would say it's very much like myself. I know your heritage, for example. So I've been to Auschwitz. I've been to, the Holocaust Museum in Israel. I've done that. I made decisions to find out more about this history so that I could understand. And if we choose not to make those decisions, of course we're not going to know about these realities. If we assume that, if we aren't aware that history tends to be written just by the victors, if we're not aware that history tends to be written by those who want to make better of the past, and when much of it was horrific, nothing will change.
Also, watching the film 13th, is it called The 13th or 13th? My goodness, again, I would urge everybody to go and find that on Netflix. There were images in that film which were not kind of horrific in themselves, but which have literally lodged themselves in my brain, which I was crying like 3 days later, just at the memory, and it's still so raw. So I think that we all owe it to humanity to sit down, watch these things, and educate ourselves.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think, we can't, I can't assume, for example, I know what it's like to, in relation to sexism of men to women. I have no idea what it's like. I've never been female.
Yeah.
But I can speak to women who can share their experiences. And sometimes I might go, yeah, I kind of know that happens. But a lot of times I'm going to be going, I had no idea the extent, the gravity, like how many people are impacted by this. And so, like, it's important, movements like Me Too, you know, of course, there is more awareness now of these issues that predominantly affect women. But there are a lot of men who will say, no, it's not an issue. We are marginalized as men. Why is there this focus on women now? You know, what about us? You know, why talk about equal pay? I don't get paid as much as that rich woman. So, you know, how can anyone say that women are paid just as well as men? Do you know, it's like having that discussion, which sounds very logical. It sounds very rational, or it should do, I hope. but it's a very similar discussion in relation to systemic racism.
Yes.
And Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. It's not saying that nothing else matters, nothing else is important, but this is the focal point. These are particular issues that need to be addressed, and we need to have these conversations. And hopefully, those who want to understand will go. Even though it's difficult to understand, I will do whatever I can to not only understand but also to take actions.
Yes.
Because understanding can be quite easy to do. Mm-hmm. Empathy can be quite easy. Feeling pain can be quite easy for many, but it's like, what do I do next? What do I do with this pain?
Yes.
To advance and to make positive changes. So I think everything that's been happening of late, and even my discussion, I've had so many, thank goodness, a lot of positivity. But I've also had so much negativity. I mean, like
from that conversation.
Oh yes,
with
lots of comments, lots of so many. I mean,
gosh.
And most of them I've actually engaged with. I know people often say you shouldn't engage with trolls and you shouldn't, but I've actually had some really interesting conversations and try to be very diplomatic and say, well, you probably weren't expecting a reply, but let me just give it. This is my opinion here. And yesterday, amazingly, which I still can't believe this, I saw this message who came from someone that I didn't know, no profile picture or anything. Yeah. I was like, do I reply? And I was like, what they said to me was so horrific, I have to reply. And they were challenging something that I said in my podcast. And I'm like, this is the fact, what you said was untrue. So before you start shouting about racism, maybe you need to do your research. So I was like, okay. So I wrote back to him and I was like, okay, well, this is the context. This is why I said this. And they came back again with some kind of hate. And then amazingly, at the end of the conversation, they said, oh, you know what? I just didn't think of it that way. Oh. And they were like, thank you so much for having this conversation with me, because you definitely didn't have to, and especially based on what I said before, and I really regret what I said, and I'm certainly going to have a different view going forward. So I was so surprised, but I know that's a rarity. I would love to say that happens all the time, but it just made me realize it's still helpful to try to have some reconciliation, to try to say that I don't just want to back away all the time, which is what you feel like doing. Like, I'm not going to engage with that person because it's just hate. But we had a bit of a conversation back and forth, and they ended up saying, in their own way, they apologized. But
that's incredible. You don't know who they will go on to speak to and try and help them to see things from a different perspective as well. So I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing on every level, Darryl. I feel very privileged to know you and to have had the chance to work with you, and hopefully we'll have opportunities in the future to spread the word about movement as medicine.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, thank you so much for coming on this morning, and hopefully I'll see you in real life soon.
Yes, for sure. Thanks so much, Susan.
Take care, Darryl.
A great host.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.